So the topic for the seventh and final panel, titled New Investment Trends. Please allow me to invite the moderator, Ms. Rebecca Ann Proctor from Arab News.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be back here and moderating this talk on new investment trends in Saudi Arabia. And I'm very honored to introduce our panelists. We have three panelists for this talk. Ahmed Al-Darwish, who's a managing partner at Noah Capital. Andrew Nichol, a partner at Lumina. And Talat Hafiz, a Saudi banking expert and also regular columnist, as well for Arab News and other titles in the kingdom. And I invite you to come and join me. I think anywhere. I'll stay here. I think it's best, yeah. So this is the last panel of today's conference, and it's been a very exciting and...
So please wake up, huh?
Wake up for the last panel. I'll try and keep it exciting as well, to keep people's attention, because I know there's been a lot of information, but I think a lot of inspiring information about this, about Saudi Arabia and the kingdom and everything that's happening in this country right now and the amazing opportunities that are taking place. Saudi Arabia is witnessing a period of unprecedented economic and social change that have, resulted in the numerous opportunities that we've been discussing over the course of today, both regionally and globally, internationally and domestically, across a variety of sectors. In terms of finance and investment, there have been several crucial trends that have been impacting the way business is done in the kingdom and outside of the kingdom. And these involve technology, gaming, healthcare, culture, a variety of new giga projects, which we'll talk about now with our panelists, who are all experts in the field of investment and finance and banking. And I think I'll turn the first question to you, Talat. You're sitting next to me. As an economist and banker, why is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia right now going through this major period of social and economic transformation?
Well, thank you for moderating such again, Brother Basil, for having us. We see it been, as I just mentioned in my speech, it's been a number of decades that we were totally dependent on oil. And we figured it out that depending on oil, I don't think this is the right direction or solution because of the vulnerability, if you will, of the oil prices, ups and downs. And if you recall, during the COVID, it went into minus, not even zero, below zero. So this is what we figured out in our vision. We have to diversify our source of income and not rely, as I mentioned, totally on oil. This is where the vision came into the picture, and as the gentleman said, it's a compass for us, rather than it's a roadmap that take us to diversity of economy. That's one, but also to change the economy totally from oil 100% dependence into non-oil economy, if you will. Our goal is to go to 50%, at least, to balance between. We're not saying, as people expecting, that we're going to say no more to oil. It's a gift of God, it says. But definitely want to balance in a way or another by reaching 2030, or even before that, is to balance between the non-oil and oil revenue. We have managed to do so far in the past 5 years since, or 6 years since the vision been launched. We have managed to increase our non-oil economy from 166 billion to triple that figure, near to 400 billion. And I think the issue is we had many sectors who are not really performing that well. One of these sections or sectors is tourism, for example. Now tourism really on the move, running. We used to be less than 1%. Today we are 4.5% after 5 years. The goal is to go up to 10% of the GDP. Mineral and كما يقولون لا يفتى مالك في المدينة. We have 5 trillion wealth of mineral that I think that could be a multiplier effect in the economic world to have it even 10 billion Saudi riyal. So sport in that regard, sport that we used to focus a lot on soccer, but now it's more diverse. You know, we had the formula, we have wrestling, we have boxing, we have, you name it. So sport even kicking in as in the economic entertainment industry. I think that's also a big venue for us to. So anyway, the purpose of it is just to get away a little bit from being chronically oil dependent into diversified economy and also diversified income for the country.
Thank you, and that's led Saudi Arabia to a variety of programs, very exciting programs, very exciting giga projects, some of which are so spectacular it's mind-boggling to even think about.
Let me give you one example. It's been from 2015 onward. For a number of years, we had a huge deficit, and in 2015 was one of the worst years in that time, where we had the largest deficit at that time. We had also the public debt is coming really out of whack. But when we start diversifying our economy, our revenue stream, if you will, under what we call the financial balanced program, and then we turned it into financial stability program, if you will. Our deficit for years has been turned last year, as a matter of fact, and even the year before, the third Q, into surplus. Last year we ended surplus of 90 billion Saudi riyal. This year we anticipate to end up with 18 billion. So I think our adjustment, if you like, with going from oil-driven economy to non-oil balancing with oil economy, I think it has worked with the surplus coming, as I told you last year, and this year is expected to.
It's quite incredible to see how it's all moving forward so quickly as well. Andrew, you've been working in the kingdom for close to a decade, if I'm not mistaken, if not longer. How accessible are the opportunities linked to Vision 2030? I mean, Vision 2030 has been the catalyst of a lot of this social and economic transformation, as we've discussed today. But for international firms, how accessible are these opportunities?
Yes, I think what's happened, the region is very much a bright spot for global growth. And I think whoever's here now has probably bought into that, given it's this late in the day. And what's happened is there's huge collaboration opportunities for international firms, and it is quite accessible. And that's what we're seeing now with our clients. We have clients across the Middle East and across the UK. And the conversations we have today are very different to what we had 3 or 4 years ago, even 5 or 6 years ago, where the Kingdom and the Middle East have become particularly accessible. The $900 billion Saudi opportunity has created these two-way capital flows. It's not just Middle East money flowing into the UK, into stock exchange, into public markets and into private markets. We're seeing money flowing from Europe back into the Middle East as well. We do a global M&A report, and we look annually at those flows. And what we've seen is for listed companies in the UK, the percentage of revenues has grown from 11% to 15% over the last 4 years. So what that shows is you've got opportunities being created in the Middle East that weren't there before or weren't accessible, and they're now being, the skills and technologies are being brought in from globally. What we see in the region and in Saudi is there's really only in any industry 5 or 6 givers of these contracts. So whether it's specialty chemicals, renewables, you have NEOM, you have Aqua, you have Aramco. There's not actually that many providers or suppliers of these contracts. So it is quite accessible. The Kingdom has become much, much better at providing accessibility to them. There's now the Ministry for Investment, you've got ministries for environment, and actually you can access them. So I think the collaboration opportunities we're seeing, the two-way capital flows and the accessibility of those mega projects is something we're really not seeing anywhere else.
And in terms of the certain sectors, Ahmed, maybe you could tell us a bit about how are we seeing an uptick in investment in specific sectors? Andrew was just mentioning more opportunities. I mean, these opportunities are being found where exactly? I know the other day we discussed technology and gaming, but what are the sectors, that are kind of rife for this moment of opportunity, both domestically, locally, but also internationally?
Yeah, so something that we focus on day to day now is technology, and since the reforms, Saudi Arabia has opened up incredibly in technology. There's been reforms and organizations set up like SVC in Saudi, which does the matching program to match kind of angel and investments across numerous sectors. There's entities set up like the Saudi VC and PE Association to help people and support fund managers, emerging fund managers in Saudi Arabia. But within technology, gaming is an incredible opportunity in Saudi, and we'll get onto it, I know, in the latter questions. Fintech is another great opportunity. 60% of all deal flow is in financial technology, which is another incredible opportunity in Saudi. Healthcare as well. We're seeing a number of opportunities within tech, within those kind of three areas, but predominantly in fintech. And there are certain entities that will power those technologies through because of its Saudi's incredibly young population. Penetration towards the internet is one of the highest in the G20. Every kid has a smartphone, one of the highest income per capita in the world as well. So technology is an enabler through the government and through the private sector now, which is a lot of deal flow that we're getting, especially in the fintech area.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's also highest for YouTube users.
Yeah.
I mean, which would make sense, right? If everyone has every, technology,
Internet.
Moving back to you, Talat,
Yeah.
in terms of banking, and you're a banking expert, I think what's really captivated the world are a lot of these giga projects, from Neom to Qiddiya, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Al-Darwish, which I spoke about earlier with. How, and there's a lot of other ones, Aqua, there's a lot of these giga projects that are coming up that are they're mind-blowing on a technology level, but also the amount of money that's going into them. How are the banks, Saudi banks helping to fund these giga projects? And two, is this funding available for international participants?
Well, thank you for asking a very important question. I believe the Saudi banking is one of the strongest banking sector worldwide, and this is being classified by Fitch 3 and 4 worldwide interchangeably, of course. And I think we're ready to support, as you just rightly mentioned, the giga and mega projects. The recent merger between Saudi American Bank and NCB to form Saudi Commercial Bank, the new bank, and also between SAB and Al-Awwal Bank, is basically to strengthen the capital base, if you will, to support such giga and mega project. If you look to the amount of fund that's extended to the private sector, it's almost near to 80%, only the private sector, to finance mega and giga project. So I believe even if you look to what we call financial indicators, safety financial indicators of Saudi banks, the capital adequacy, which is the Basel one, it's only 8%. We're almost 20%, so we're almost 2.5 times the Basel requirement. If you look to the non-performing loans to the total loans portfolio, we're talking less than 2%, exactly 1.8%. So I believe the Saudi banking sector, aside from, of course, the technology, it's one of the most advanced technology using the fintech and using the latest technology available. So, just to ensure the Saudi banking sector is ready to finance such major projects, whether these projects are linked to the PIF, although the PIF has a deep pocket, of course, but sometimes banks do participate with the private sector who's supporting certain project with the PIF. But again, and we have private sectors here, they can confirm what I'm saying. The banking system in Saudi is ready, is liquid enough, matter of fact, to finance a project, whether being government or non-government project that related to the private sector.
And one more question onto that. I mean, you mentioned the PIF.
Yeah.
The PIF is playing a vital role in the investment of
Indeed.
these giga and mega projects. What is that role inside the kingdom and abroad? Because a lot of people, at least some people, are confused. What is its role? And
Well,
and it obviously has deep pockets, but how can it?
The PIF basically the sovereign fund, then has been established in 1974. Been restructured in 2015, management-wise, and also the fund itself been restructured. Chaired, of course, by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. 2017 will start really up and running with the new strategy. At that time, the total asset under management, 570 billion Saudi riyal. Just 5 years later, after the restructuring of the fund, we almost now 700 billion US dollars. So the figure has multiplied almost 3 times. Managing, whether establishing or investing in companies, around 79 companies. The most important thing that he's focusing on 13 sectors of the economy. Partly entertainment, one of them, as I mentioned, electronic games, sport. Also, the most important thing, he managed to create it over the past years, more than 500K, in jobs creation. And I believe this is very important to the economy to deal with the unemployment rate that the highest was back in 2017 at 12.7%. Now we stand last year at 8%. So that's a big reduction, of course. The plan of the fund is to raise 1.8 million jobs in Kingdom. Also, the plan in 24-25 is to go to 4 trillion riyals. The plan to go to 7 or 10 trillion riyals by 2030. Before the restructuring, we were behind, to be honest with you. But now, today, we stand the 5th largest fund on earth. This is not only the thing, the diversity of the fund. The return has increased from 2% before restructuring, tripled the return, 6%. Also, we went into diverse industries. Lucid, one of the electric car, they started working on their factory in King Abdullah Economic City. The first car, I believe, is going to be out 2027. We have another investment of the fund, which is the Seer. That's a purely Saudi car, electric car, under the Saudi trade. Will be our first car will be next year, 2024. Plus the diversity, you name it, and pharmaceutical, and food, and construction. And this is maybe it's a good chance to answer what we hear sometimes in the media, that the PIF is competing with the private sector and taking business away from them. And I think Mr. Ali and Mr. Amr has mitigated that concern. The PIF is not competing, rather than complementing the private sector. Especially the PIF takes high risk sort of projects. If you look to NEOM, for example, NEOM, it's a totally run on green hydrogen. No cars, no carbon. They use the most sophisticated, advanced, communication, like Internet of Things. You can move the line, one of the region, which uses linear engineering. And that's to us, it's something really experimental in a way. And this is not traditional projects, by the way. The line itself, 120 kilos long. You can have it end to end, just pass it in 20 minutes. You can finish whatever you want in NEOM, shopping whatever you want in 5 minutes. So I think our cities like NEOM, like Excon, like Trojena, for example. Trojena, it's something really out of the box, let's just say. It's a city, part of the NEOM, where we're going to hold the Winter Olympic, Asian Olympic, skiing. Just imagine, a region that you can ski in Saudi Arabia. This is coming soon, huh? 2027. So when somebody says, we are duplicating, or we are our project are traditional, I would question that. I wish that he could convince me, so I would be convinced of what has been said.
There's so much innovation, and it's happening at such a speed that I think people sometimes, also in the media, there's a lot of questions.
The beauty about the line, the amount of mirror, the way that's been structured, that in any position in that line, you can see everything around you. You see the structure is really unique in itself, revolutionary, and the way it's been,
structured, yeah. And kind of moving on from this, from the PIF, and you use the word complementing.
Yeah.
And I thought I'd ask Andrew, this idea again of complementing, but in terms of complementing.
By the way, we have businessmen now; they can prove what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Agree or disagree?
Complementing, or the public-private partnerships, and how are they emerging in the kingdom? From your experience and from your many years of experience, and how do you see that? And I think the word complementing is so crucial, because a lot of people, I have heard this over, people sort of say, what is PIF, and it's taking away business, but it seems that there is more and more a complementing.
Well, I think with a $900 billion capex program, it can't all be done by the public sector. Yeah. So public-private partnerships are coming, they are happening, and they're not just happening in traditional sectors. So of course we're seeing industrials, we're seeing in the mega projects, the giga projects, we're seeing in AI. The National Centre for Privatisation was set up in, I think, 2017 or 2018. I actually worked on the first grain mills privatisation a few years ago. So these projects are happening, and what that means is that it's opening up to international markets. So it's not just Saudi projects with Saudi financing, it's Saudi projects with international financing and international partners. And what we've seen in the kingdom is it's very much become a net exporter of innovation. I talked about these two-way capital flows, but it's not just capital flowing out and capital flowing back now, but the innovation is happening in kingdom. So there's $40 billion of renewables, green hydrogen projects happening. The quantum of those projects isn't happening anywhere else. So if you are a multinational firm that's headquartered and listed in London, if you're not accessing those projects, when China, when the US, when Europe wants the latest forms of innovation, the challenges are being solved in the Middle East and in Saudi Arabia. So that exporting of innovation will happen, and that public and private sector partnerships are really, really important, and they're only going to grow over the next decade.
I think that's, it's something I've seen over the last few years in my own reporting, but, this is sort of a footnote to this conversation, but I think the centers of the world are changing. You're just saying this is happening in the Middle East, the innovation's happening in the Middle East, the markets actually can't ignore what's happening in the Gulf specifically, at a time that we're seeing a lot of change, both geopolitically, economically, and also climate change. In terms of just onto that, Andrew, how would you say, how did renewables move from being a fringe sector of the regional power industry to now driving it specifically in Saudi Arabia?
Again, I think the numbers speak for themselves. So 7 of the top 10 projects in Saudi are renewables linked, and that's 75% of all the capital investment. So obviously we talk about fossil fuels, but most of the investment is going into renewables. And again, it comes down to innovation. This is where the innovation is happening. These are highly technical projects. You've got NEOM Green Energy has been set up with $10 billion of funding. These projects aren't happening anywhere else. So I think Saudi is blessed not only with fossil fuels, but also a great centre for solar power, for wind power as well. So we will see that transition over time. It won't happen overnight, but that it is where the investment is happening. And when it happens in Saudi, that technology will be exported to other parts of the world. So it's been a huge shift in the last 10 years. It's not just talk, it's practical implementation. I used to track the number of MOUs that were signed. I looked at then the dollars that then tracked the MOUs. And over the last 5 years, you can really see the linkage. When an MOU is signed and someone announces a project, it actually happens. I think 10, 15 years ago, there was a lot of announcements, but less of them were actually came to fruition. So that's been a big change now. When announcements are made, things do happen. And I do think Vision 2030, it's a roadmap, it's a plan, but there'll likely be a Vision 2040, 50 and 60 as well to progress. So I think it's a great roadmap, and it's very exciting what's happening.
Ahmed, we spoke the other day a little bit about the current state of technology. I mean, I attended earlier this year the LEAP conference, which was mind-blowing. It was not only huge, so many people were there from all over the world.
In Riyadh, right?
In Riyadh, I mean, I actually couldn't even wrap my mind over it. What I was seeing from AI to gaming, all sorts of technology. Actually, some of it I wasn't even.
I just want to do a quick comment on
Okay.
that. In the Leap, usually we wait for things to come to us, ideas, innovation, whatever, and we listen. This year is different. We listen, but also we let others listen to us. And we had a lot of innovation, technology, purely 100% Saudi. So you see how the thing has changed as, you said that the technology is kicking. In each and every project that we do, new technology somehow is there.
No, it was an interesting. There's an interesting growing mix of Saudi companies, also international companies.
Yeah.
So there's a real boom there. But I'll let Ahmed talk about the state of technology investment trends in Saudi Arabia and how have you been seeing interesting technology trends and opportunities that have arisen in the kingdom recently.
Yeah, I think one sector that is really flourishing, and if you look at the numbers, is gaming, right? I think Saudi Arabia has, again, to the points that we spoke about earlier, a very young population. 70% of the population is under the age of 35, high income per capita. And if you look at the gaming industry globally, it's a $200 billion industry, growing year on year. 3 billion gamers around the world. 10% of that is in MENA, and within the kingdom is a high portion of that. And that's because of all the data points that we have. That a lot of the people on Twitch streaming games, you'll see it, is from Saudi Arabia. They love watching other people play games. But now they're going further. Why? Is because we have the infrastructure in Saudi, the communication infrastructure, to enable people to play games, to enable people to interact in gaming. Gaming is not just watching other people play, but it's communicating while watching these games. Shout out to my colleagues at STC. The great power of the infrastructure and communication does really, really well. Another thing that we have in Saudi is we have a esports champion. We have a FIFA champion. With the dossier that shows believe it or not, he's even got a better record than me on FIFA, which is very hard to tell. But he is the global champion in esports. And that is a big portion of what's happening. And we've also hosted a lot of events in Saudi around kind of esports, and PIF has made significant investments in a lot of assets in the space. One thing that we need to go to the next level in Saudi is the grassroots. So how do we get the younger population to program and train them to become coders and enable them to create content? Now we consume a lot of content, but how do we then now transform that to exporting a lot of content? A lot of people in the future will be able to do a lot of things, and today they're able to in-play games and interact with their friends on games, and in the future, you can buy something and on a game and it'll arrive to your home. So I think there's things happening in gaming which is really interesting in Saudi, and we've gone leaps and bounds in that, and we're one of the fastest growing countries year on year in that specific segment within technology, which is kind of very exciting. And I think demographics of our young population will speak for itself, and we'll be creating content for the world. And what better way to show Saudi through gaming, which will be an interesting way.
Yeah, definitely. Also creative ways as well. And just adding, the other day you mentioned also fintech, and early in the conversation, fintech in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, fintech accounts for 60-70% of all technology deal flow in Saudi. We've seen fintech companies and technology companies even list in Saudi. A lot of that is through reforms happening, or even on the regulatory side, sandboxes coming out in Saudi Arabia and enabling a lot of companies to flourish. We've seen, even within certain segments of fintech, like managing capital markets, robot advisory, for the young population and even people to manage wealth management all online within fintech. Open banking is a great area now within fintech that the regulator has allowed startups to interact with banks. We've seen a lot of banks adopt as well corporate venture arms in Saudi to partner up with these startups and to enable them to come in. So fintech is a big portion of what's happening in Saudi Arabia in terms of a technology standpoint. And that's, in the numbers in terms of deals that's happening. And it goes to speak of, it's a region that's very unbanked compared to, MENA generally. So that there will be a lot of people that will try to, the young population now in Saudi, they want to interact through their banks. We are very kind of different people. We have different interests. So why are banks very similar? Why do we bank in the same areas? Banking needs to be adaptive to the person's personality now. We're seeing a lot of, London's a big hub in fintech, and you see a lot of people interact through the neobanks as well, or they relate more to their banking, and they care about where their money's being spent. So I think we're seeing a lot of those trends in Saudi where banking is more personalized than before, and that will be a big trend.
That's really interesting. How, in terms of foreign, FDI, foreign direct investment in the kingdom, and many of the panels we've spoken about today, including a panel I moderated earlier, there's this, cross flow, I'd say, of exchange, which is really exciting, and I think it's mutually beneficial. Investment trends, in the kingdom in terms of foreign direct investment, but also, in Europe, specifically in the UK, where we are today. I'll open this up to all the panelists. I don't know who wants to go first, but what would you say the role of, how have these opportunities, and there's so myriad opportunities in the kingdom, how have they impacted foreign direct investment?
You mean the FDI? Huh?
Yeah, FDI.
Well, the target of the vision is to have the FDI 5.7% of the non-oil GDP. We have accumulated over the number of years when we started the vision over 200 billion worth of investment. We used to attract, again, before the vision, $5 billion a year. We have now multiplied that figure by 3 or 4. For FDI or the non-FDI is really flowing very good to the kingdom, basically for many reasons. There is a lot of investment opportunity, but more importantly than the opportunity is the kingdom has introduced over the past couple of years since we started our vision, either or updated or upgraded or new laws, more than 700 laws that related to doing business in the kingdom. As a matter of fact, the IMD report, recent report by IMD and Switzerland, has positioned us number one in the world. Yes, the way that we manage our finance and budget, the first country we ranked in the world. In others, like ease of doing business, we have advanced a lot. If you compare notes 3-4 years back with today, because I'll just cite a quick example. Before the vision to issue a CR, we call it, to certify or to register a business, it takes you probably weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. Now you will do it in a matter of minutes. Maybe even seconds. You can establish your business.
Almost like a visa to go to the kingdom.
Yeah. And the visa was, again, a visa for businessmen or businesswomen, whatever. It used to be difficult and hard. Now you can, with the electronic visa, blink of an eye. It takes you a second to issue a visa. And we have multi-number of visas. It's not only business visa. We have a business friend visa or a family visa that you can visit your friend in Saudi. Business visa, you just apply electronically, simple, and you're on board. So the developing of the business environment, aside from Invest in Saudi and what the Ministry of Investment is doing, and as I said, introducing or upgrading 700 laws related to doing business in Saudi and opportunities, as the gentleman said. If you want tourism, we have it. It's open-ended. If you want technology, open-ended. Whether fintech, our target is to reach in a couple of years to come 500 fintech companies. We started 3 years from few numbers. We jumped into more than 147 fintech company. As the gentleman was saying, that 63% or more of the population is young population, 35 years and under. If you want logistic hub, we are an excellent logistic hub. As I said in today my speech, we're connecting 3 major continents, Europe, Africa, and Asia. So this is also make us a very excellent connecting hub. The new takes you just 4.5 hours from Europe to reach Neom, which is an excellent destination, tourism, relaxation, whatever you wanna call it. If you talk about technology, if you're talking about artificial intelligence, if you talk about Internet of Things, so it's an ample opportunities, plus ease to doing business, plus the report that we received from IMF, being the fast-growing economy in the world with 8.7% last year, and the expectation also we will continue to grow for years to come. I think all of this, with the opportunities available, it just attract investors to come.
So I think the way that firms access the region has changed as well, and that impacts those FDI numbers. So the last time Saudi hit 20 billion of FDI was 2011.
Yes.
It's going to exceed that this year. It will exceed the UAE, not that it's a competition, but it kind of is. It will exceed the UAE for the first time in over 10 years this year.
We didn't say London, we said UAE.
Exactly. But I think the way that international firms access the kingdom has changed. So 30 or 40 years ago, you might have seen a partnership or a joint venture, and it's still a very appropriate way to partner in the region. But now you're seeing direct investment as well. You're seeing M&A, you're seeing transactions. You see global firms, Aegis, for example, they made 6 acquisitions, 3 of which in Saudi Arabia in the last 2 years. So if you are a global engineering firm, you might not just be looking at a partnership, which doesn't require a huge amount of investment, some working capital. But now you are looking at M&A, you're setting up an office, you're hiring directly as well. So that's contributed to the FDI, and it reflects the opportunities in the kingdom.
And I think one important thing is the safety and security part, and that's very important. Let's be frank, the capital usually, as they say in Arabic, we coward, Japan. He looks for opportunity where it's safe to do business on a long-term basis. And this is, we have it, despite the fact that, we went through turbulence in the region, and it's not a secret, and what they called the spring,
Arab Spring.
Yeah, but despite the fact we're a very stabilized country for years, and I'm talking over now 300 years.
I think it's the highest. I was doing some research. I had to do something on cybersecurity the other day, and there's a lot of growth in cybersecurity in Saudi Arabia.
We are the first in the Arab world and the second internationally. It has been proven really also the way that we dealt with technology during the COVID-19, where we had at that time the G20 meeting, and the 2 virtual for the first time since the establishment of the G20 in 1999, the 2 virtual meetings that took place in Saudi Arabia, and they were successful by all standards.
And Ahmed, I don't know if you want to add something about FDIs from your experience.
Yeah, from a kind of technology standpoint, in terms of technology firms, we've seen like Sequoia, a leading VC firm, come into Saudi, do its kind of first deal with Lean Technologies, a great fintech in Saudi and based also in London. So we've seen a number of big firms doing technology deals, partnering up with a lot of VC. Hambro Perks in the UK have a presence in Saudi with their Oryx fund. Anthemis, one of our fund portfolio fund managers that we're working with are doing more investments in Saudi, looking at Saudi with partnership. They have a number of investors in Saudi now as well. Also localizing tech product. There's a large SME bank in Europe and in the UK that's looking to expand in Saudi and using Saudi as a kind of launch pad to the rest of the region. And that's because of the regulator and the ease of doing business. The amount of numbers, the ranking of Saudi in terms of ease of doing business is incredible over the last few years, and technology firms are seeing that, and they're seeing the talent, and people are coming. And it's all about talent at the end of the day. If you attract talent and you make an environment for talent to flourish, people will come, people will invest, people will set up. And that's what's happening even from a technology perspective.
Well, that's palpable. I mean, when I'm often in the kingdom, and you can really feel the eagerness and the eagerness and urgency, I think, to take hold of
To
this
be
period.
honest, when you look at, I'm serious. When you look at Saudis, he and she, we're all eager, we are excited.
Yes.
Even at our homes.
Yeah.
It is not only in the business sense or the government sense. Even our family, small families, we are eager for change.
It's been almost addictive for me. I think as a visitor, I think, to go around the kingdom and to see this moment. It's I think we could go on and on. It's a wonderful topic, and it's been fascinating to hear everybody's thoughts and experiences. I open up for some quick questions, if anybody has a question before we wrap up for today.
Hi, thank you. I'm Matt Jones here from the Saudi British Joint Business Council. A question to Ahmed Al-Darwish. So a key strand of Vision 2030 is obviously focused on the transformation of the financial sector. Within this, do you believe there's a place for the UK fintech ecosystem? And if so, kind of what's Noah Capital, I guess, doing to further that cause? Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I think obviously the UK in terms of kind of fintech is one of the best countries in the world of attracting fintechs and creating fintechs here. But in Saudi, what we're seeing is a large population that's attracting a lot of fintech companies to look at expanding in Saudi and setting up in Saudi, especially for that demographic where, if you look at robot advisory, there's a well-known company that's expanding in Saudi with our help through kind of the robot advisory route, and also supporting through a lot of sandboxes and learning from a lot of what the UK has done so well in fintech now in its own Saudi way for the region. Our regulator within the sandbox side of things is really forward-thinking within the fintech space. It's looked at what's good for the Saudi population and what's worked elsewhere, and it's adopting that within fintech. And there's Saudi FinTech, which is an organization that helps launchpad as well fintechs. That's very supportive. And if you ask a lot of fintech founders within Saudi, they will really speak well of what the regulator's done. And if you look at even international investors that have come into Saudi and invested in fintech, it's a very mature ecosystem in fintech. You'll be very, very surprised when you look at the devil's in the detail. And if you look at that detail, it looks very good for Saudi.
Okay, we have time for just one more question.
Yeah, Sony here again. Interesting panel. So my question is about FDI. So I'm curious to know, we've seen a lot of investment moving into Dubai, DIFC, Dubai International Financial Center. So as a result of sanctions. So my question is, how does the Saudi Kingdom intends to tap into and attract all these investment leaving the Western world towards all these foreign direct investors that are trying to stay away from sanctions? Thank you.
If I understand your question correctly, Saudi Arabia is open to all kind of investment that end of the day benefits its economy and benefit its national income and people. With its, of course, regulation that, correspond, if you will. So if we feel the investment is viable for the country, viable for the economy, it's more than welcome, of course. But it has to, of course, any country, whether being Saudi, UK, elsewhere, there is parameters, if you will, and measurement for investment, capital flow to come to the country. Definitely, we look for investment that create, added value to the economy. We're not so much, eager, which is fine, of course, to capital flow, but definitely we're eager for know-how, we're eager for job creation. That things really an added value to the economy.
Thank you. We have one more question.
Thank you. My question to Andrew. You mentioned the increase in foreign direct investment into Saudi Arabia as opposed to compared to the rest of the Gulf. But what kind of FDI is it? Because is it still the traditional, no-brainer oil-related exploration, petrochemicals, that kind of thing? Or is it coming into new sectors that we are opening up, like tourism, hospitality, healthcare, manufacturing, those kinds of things? Because that would be an indicator as to how people or investors are seeing Saudi Arabia. We've always been, attracting big investments in the oil industry. Government-to-government type of deals, that kind of thing. I think what Saudis are more interested in is FDI in the private economy to help us, to help us along in this in our Vision 2030 investments and growth.
So it's really interesting. It tracks almost directly the 6 pillars of Vision 2030. So yes, it's traditional sectors, social and hard infrastructure, but it is also travel and tourism. And I go back to the first point I made around, if you look at revenues generated by FTSE main list companies going from 11% to 15%, that's across those 6 sectors. So National Express, a listed UK company, has doubled its revenues in the region, and it has Saudi operations, has doubled its revenues in the region. And that's another example of that FDI coming in. You look at the renewables sector, you look at the green hydrogen, all those projects are being taken advantage of, or looking to capitalise on those opportunities from global firms. So it's exactly the sectors that are needed, those 6 pillars of Vision 2030. We're seeing it across the board. And those are the sectors that the kingdom needs, because the kingdom would like those skills and technologies, and then it will incubate those technologies and then expand it and innovate to the rest of the world. So it's not just those traditional sectors. It's expanding across the 6 pillars. And I think that's what's quite exciting. And I think the commercialization of intellectual property is growing very quickly as well. It's not just the import of those skills, but it's being created in-house in the region and in the kingdom. So I think it is interesting what we're seeing. It's diversified across the economy. And we talk about FDI, it was 20 billion, or it's going to be 20 billion this year, but there's a 900 billion capex program in Saudi across social and hard infrastructure. So there's a big differential there. So you can see that FDI number really growing quite quickly.
Thanks, that's good news.
Thank you very much for joining us today and for this panel.